Next up on our list of router services that we might need to troubleshoot is NAT, Network Address Translation. What happens if NAT is not working correctly? First of all, let's just remind ourselves, what is NAT? What does that do for us? Well, oftentimes it's used when we have a private IP address space inside of our network, and we have maybe a smaller pool of globally usable IP addresses that can be routed over the internet. We refer to the IP addresses of our inside devices that's hard-coded on those inside devices. We refer to those addresses as inside local addresses. Then, as they go through the router, they're translated by NAT into a globally routable IP address. It still refers to a device inside of our network, but it's globally routable, so we call it an inside global address. What NAT does, it translates, generally this is what it does, it translates from inside local addresses, private IP addresses, to inside global addresses, publicly routable IP addresses. And as traffic is coming back in from the internet, we translate from the inside global to the inside local. What might go wrong with NAT? Well, with classic NAT, as we're going to call it, we have a designation for an interface to say that it's an inside interface or an outside interface, and maybe that's set up incorrectly. We might have an access control list configured that defines the pool of inside local addresses that we're going to be translating into inside global addresses, and maybe it's wrong. Maybe we're not giving a correct ACL reference. We might specify incorrect IP addresses as we're setting up a static NAT statement, or we're specifying a pool of inside global addresses. We're going to also talk about an issue where a routing loop can occur. Traffic tries to come into the network and it's not routable. We're actually targeting an inside global address that doesn't exist, and the router's going to route it back out, and we could have a little routing loop going on. We'll get into that. Or there's I referred to something called classic NAT. There's a newer version of NAT called NAT Virtual Interface, or NVI, and it has a slightly different set of commands. You don't really go in and say that you're an inside interface and you're an outside interface. You just enable NAT on an interface with NVI. And we can do either one. They both work great, but we just need to decide, are we going to do classic NAT, or are we going to do NVI, and then we need to use that set of commands. We do not want to mix the commands between the two. Before we get into the troubleshooting aspects, let's take a look at the configuration. Up top on screen, we see classic NAT. Notice we're going into different interfaces, and we're specifying those interfaces as either inside or outside interfaces. And here, we're saying that we're doing a static mapping. We're saying that we want to take this inside local address and map that to this inside global address, this publicly routable IP address. Sometimes, though, instead of giving a static command here, in fact, let's go ahead and do this live, we can say here is an access control list representing a pool of our inside addresses, and we want to translate that into a range or a pool of inside global addresses. Let's go to the live interface and see how that's done. And we'll do this again on router R1. And on router R1, let's create an access control list that defines the inside local addresses, our inside pool of addresses that need to be translated before they can be routed out on the public internet. Let me do an access list command, access list, and I'll say 1. We'll just use a standard access list. Access list 1, and we're going to be matching network 10.1.1.0, and we've got a 24-bit subnet mask, so I'll give a 0.0.0.255 wildcard, and that's our ACL that says, here's our group of inside local addresses. Next, let's create a pool of inside global addresses. To do that, we can say IPNAT pool. I'll give it a name of TSHOOT, and let's say that we're going to begin with IP address 209.165.200.10, and we'll go all the way through 209.165.200. Let's say 254. And we're going to use a prefix length of 24 bits, 24-bit subnet mask, in other words. Now I've defined my pool with an access control list of inside local addresses. I've also created a pool of inside global addresses. Now let's tie those together with a statement. I'll say IPNAT inside. My inside addresses, my inside local addresses, they're going to be defined by access control list 1, and they're going to be translated into the inside global address pool that we named TSHOOT. And That's it. That's all we need to do. Oh, except we need to go into interface configuration mode, don't we? Let's take a look at our topology once again. And let's see, I'll go into interface fast Ethernet 0/0, and I'll say IP NAT outside. Actually, I'll do inside. And I'll go into interface fast Ethernet 0/1, and we'll do IP NAT outside. That is a way that we can configure a dynamic NAT pool mapping using a classic NAT. Let's take a peek, though, at this new approach to configuring NAT, NVI, NAT Virtual Interface. It's similar, but we need to be consistent with our syntax. Notice the big difference here. Let's clear this off. I want to really highlight the difference. The big difference is, instead of going into an interface and saying IP NAT inside or IP NAT outside, we go into our interfaces and just say, you're enabled for IP NAT. We have no concern about whether we're inside or outside. We just say, you're going to do NAT. That's a newer way of configuring it. And again, that's called NAT Virtual Interface, or NVI.